Hi, and welcome to EnviroCentre's Green Room. Meet the people on the front lines of climate action and find out what keeps them up at night. And this week, we're joined by Matthew Price, General Manager of Uber Canada. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming. We ask all of our guests to bring one environmental fact to share. What have you brought with you today?
I have brought a fact, not one that I'm particularly proud of, but the fact I'll share is that transportation makes up a quarter of global climate emissions, and in most of our major cities, it's the leading cause of pollution. It is, however, an area that I think ride sharing could have a massive impact in kind of changing, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about it today.
Great. That is a great segue to the next question. What climate problem keeps you up at night?
Well, to continue to elaborate on that stat, when we look at transportation, 3/4 of the contribution comes from gas-powered cars. And while ride sharing, while Uber contributes kind of very low single digits towards that, some would say not a big contributor, we still think we could have a pretty massive impact in accelerating the transition to zero emission transportation. And I personally believe that this is going to be the next area that ride sharing stands to fundamentally change how our cities operate. And that's really the reason that Uber made its commitment last year to be zero emissions in the cities that have supportive policies by 2030, and in every city we operate in globally by 2040.
Great. Okay. So you've already kind of touched on one of the probably many solutions, but I'll ask anyway, what is the solution?
Well, ask away, because it's there's not a particularly a simple one there. But the one thing I think a lot about is that not all cars are created equal. And if you think about it, your average Uber driver spends a lot more time in their car than the average car owner, which means that for every Uber driver that makes the transition to emission zero, to an electric vehicle, they have an immediate outsized impact on putting green miles on our streets. And if you think about it, we've done the math. We expect to see about 3 to 4 times greater emission savings than your average vehicle. And if you think about the millions of Uber drivers across the world, all it takes is a really small portion of them to make the shift to have actually quite a big impact in our cities. And not only is that going to have an impact on taking miles off the road, but also going to contribute to the scale that's so critical to bring down the cost of charging, as well as the cost of vehicles. So we think this is going to be a real catalyst to helping facilitate that transition to emission zero.
So what do you think is in the way?
Oh, another difficult question. The way I think about it is climate change is a team sport, and I think that is the crux of the challenge here. And addressing this is bigger than the ride-sharing industry. It's bigger than any one industry. And what it's fundamentally going to take is private sector working with government and policymakers to catalyze the shift. I was recently reading a study out of California that unfortunately concluded that 1 in 5 electric vehicle owners in California have made the switch back to a gas-powered car because of the hassle of charging. And we just can't afford to have 20% of EV drivers, moving in the wrong direction. And, we need to work collaboratively to figure out how to improve charging infrastructure in our cities, both the access to it, the convenient access to it, but also the cost to it. I think the other thing that I think a lot about is the actual vehicles themselves. And like any piece of technology, over time, as more people adopt it, it will come down the cost curve. It will get cheaper. But in Canada, we need that to happen, but we also need to improve access to the vehicles. It's actually pretty hard to get your hands on an electric vehicle in Canada. So as an example, we're working with a UK-based company called Arrival to actually develop an electric vehicle for rideshare drivers to help to contribute to this. But, together with the charging, we really need to work together, public and private sector, to lead and to catalyze the shift that Canadians expect of us.
So you're talking about working collaboratively between industries. That's great. So how can people help?
I mean, in lots of ways, but the one that's top of mind for me is at Uber what we call the Green Futures Program, and we as Uber have made an $800 million commitment to this. But every time a rider goes to request a trip, and you know, during these times an essential trip, we encourage them to now request Uber Green. That is our new hybrid and electric option. And it's $1 more than your equivalent UberX trip. And that dollar, half of it immediately goes to the driver to help fund what tends to be a more expensive cost of operation than a gas vehicle. The other half goes into that fund. And we're going to use that fund in lots of ways to fundamentally bring down the cost of vehicles and improve access and cost of charging for drivers. So, you know, the next time you go to take an Uber, do consider making the green choice and going sustainable. The other area that I think is particularly pertinent here is we're working hard to try to add multiple modes of transportation to our platform. So when you leave your house, we perhaps for the first time create something that's sufficiently convenient that, you know, you may forego the car, you may forego your second car, and give you lots of ways to get from A to B. So recently we've integrated public transit journey planning information into our app. So you can now look at how to combine public transit with your UberX or Uber Green trip to give you more sustainable options to travel. And we're actually in the process of integrating Lime into our app. We've done it in 55 cities across the world and many more to come. But again, electric vehicles and electric scooters to help give you more options to get from A to B, but hopefully give you options that will encourage you to choose to go green.
That's great. Thank you. All great information to know. So with all of the things that you've mentioned then, and with your vision of whatever will come next, what is the good future?
What is the good future? I think for me, the good future is business working with government to create more vibrant, livable cities across our world, but certainly here in Canada. And I think during COVID-19, we've started to see some of that and see that good future is maybe not as far in the future as we'd hoped. And I think a lot of businesses, Uber certainly, have taken this as a bit of a moment to reflect and to think about how do we build back better and how do we build back greener. And I'm thrilled to see the recent commitments from our government in terms of committing to a green recovery, committing to more aggressive emission targets. And I'm just really excited to get to work with you know, lots of players across this ecosystem to figure out how we do this and how we do it together to build a better Canada.